Level 1, the application. You're 23, fresh out of college with a political science degree, and $37,000 in student debt. You see a job posting for a legislative correspondent in a congressman's office, $30,000 a year in Washington, D.C., one of the most expensive cities in America. You apply anyway because this is how it starts. Everyone says 3 years on the Hill opens every door in Washington. What they don't tell you is which doors or what's waiting on the other side. You get the job. Your title sounds important, but you're basically sorting mail. Constituent letters about Social Security, healthcare, immigration. You draft responses that a legislative assistant will rewrite, that a legislative director will approve, that the congressman will never read. You work 60 hours a week. Your apartment is a basement studio in Arlington that smells like mildew. Your roommate is a cockroach named Gerald. You're living paycheck to paycheck, but you're building something. Relationships, knowledge, access to the machine. Here's what you learn fast. Congress doesn't run on legislation. It runs on relationships between staffers who actually know how things work. The members, the elected officials with their names on the door, most of them don't understand the policy. They understand politics, fundraising, television appearances. The actual work of governing happens 3 levels below them in cramped offices where 26-year-olds are drafting amendments to tax law they learned about yesterday. You watch the senior staffers, the legislative directors pulling down $60,000 a year, which sounds like a fortune, until you remember they're working 80-hour weeks and haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. The chiefs of staff making maybe $90,000, managing entire congressional offices, handling crises, putting out fires, sleeping 4 hours a night. And you notice something, they don't stay long. The average congressional staffer lasts 3 years. Some make it 5. Almost nobody makes it 10. You start to understand why when you see the guy from the Financial Services Committee leave for a lobbying firm. He was making $70,000 as a legislative director. His new salary is $340,000. Same work, different side of the building. Instead of writing financial regulations, he's explaining to banks how to navigate them. Level 2, the expertise. You get promoted to legislative assistant after 18 months. Now you have a portfolio. Healthcare policy. You become the office expert on Medicare reimbursement rates, prescription drug pricing, hospital regulations. You didn't go to medical school, but you're writing legislation that affects millions of people's access to healthcare. This is how it works. Smart kids with liberal arts degrees become instant experts because someone has to do the job. You start taking meetings. Lobbyists want to explain their clients' positions. They're polite, well-dressed, armed with briefing books and talking points. They take you to lunch. Not expensive lunch, you're not senior enough for that yet. But lunch. They remember your name. They send follow-up emails with additional information. They're building a relationship because they know something you're just starting to figure out. You're 25 years old, making $42,000 a year, and you're helping write healthcare policy that will generate billions in revenue for somebody. The lobbyists across the table are making 5 times your salary. Some of them are making 10 times. Some of them used to have your exact job. They sat in your chair 3 years ago, worked the same insane hours, lived in the same terrible apartments. Then they made the jump. 866 people made that jump in 2025 alone. Congressional staffers and members going from Capitol Hill to K Street, the street where the lobbying firms cluster. That's a 60% increase from the year before. The revolving door isn't just spinning, it's accelerating. You start doing the math in your head during meetings. 3 years at this salary versus 1 year at theirs. But you're not ready yet. You need more than healthcare policy expertise. You need relationships across the aisle, connections in other offices, a reputation. The most valuable thing you're building isn't knowledge about Medicare Part D, it's your contact list. Every staffer you meet, every favor you trade, every late-night working session where you help someone from another office, that's currency. That's what you'll sell later. Level 3, the legislative director. You make the jump after 4 years total on the Hill. New congressman, new office, they need someone to run their legislative operation. $68,000, which feels like wealth until you realize you're now managing 5 people and responsible for every piece of legislation the office touches. You're 30 years old, you haven't saved any money. Your college friends in consulting are buying houses, you're still renting. But now you're in the room where it happens. Committee markups where legislation actually gets written. Negotiations between offices on bill language. Meetings with senior members about strategy. You know how the process works, not theoretically but practically. Which senators can be persuaded, which House members will never budge, which staffers in other offices can cut a deal. This knowledge has value. Specific, quantifiable value. The lobbyists start calling you directly now. Not your boss, you. Because you're the one who knows if an amendment has a chance, if the timing is right, if the committee chairman's office will play ball. You're the one who can explain why something that looks simple on paper is actually impossible, given current political dynamics. That's worth something. Actually, it's worth about $180,000 a year, which is what the median lobbyist generates in revenue. You start noticing who's leaving. The guy from the Judiciary Committee just went to a law firm's lobbying shop. The woman from Oversight joined a trade association. Your former colleague from Financial Services is now working for a bank, doing the same work he did before, except now he's advocating for one client instead of the public interest. He bought a house in Bethesda. His wife quit her job. They're having a second kid. You're working 70 hours a week helping your boss prepare for hearings, managing legislation that will never pass, putting out constituent fires and wondering how long you can sustain this. The answer for most people is not much longer. 65% of congressional staffers plan to leave within 5 years. You're at year 4. The question isn't if you'll leave. The question is what you'll become when you do. Level 4, the junior lobbyist. The offer comes from a trade association representing hospitals. $140,000, full benefits, 4 weeks vacation, normal working hours. You take it. Your first day feels surreal. The office has natural light. People leave at 6. There's a gym in the building. You have your own desk, not one shared with 3 other staffers. Your job is straightforward. Monitor legislation affecting hospitals, track bills in committee, alert the association when something relevant is moving, provide analysis on what has a realistic chance of passing, draft position papers on proposed regulations. Simple stuff compared to managing an entire legislative portfolio for a congressman. But you're not generating revenue yet. Your support staff, the real lobbyists, the ones billing clients directly, they're making 3 times your salary. They're the former chiefs of staff, the committee counsels, the people with direct relationships to current members. You study how they operate. They don't just know policy, they know people. Which staffer in the Energy Committee office actually writes the amendments? Which senator will take a meeting based on a single phone call? Which legislative director owes them a favour from 5 years ago? That's the game. Level 5, the registered lobbyist. 3 years at the trade association and you've built your reputation. You know, healthcare policy inside out now. Medicare reimbursement rates, hospital safety regulations, the entire regulatory framework. More importantly, you've maintained your Hill relationships. Weekly lunches with former colleagues, coffee meetings with current staffers. You're a resource, someone who can explain complex policy without an obvious agenda. When your old office needs healthcare expertise, they call you. Not to lobby them, just to understand the issue. That access is everything. You register as a federal lobbyist. Your name goes into a public database. You file quarterly disclosure reports listing your clients and your activities. You're now officially part of the influence industry. The firm you join is mid-sized. 40 lawyers and lobbyists, clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to regional business groups. Your starting book of business is modest. 2 healthcare clients that followed you from the association. But the firm sees potential. You're 35, you have a decade of Hill experience, you have relationships across both parties. You're exactly what clients pay for. Your value becomes clear during your first major win. A client needs language inserted into an appropriations bill. Not the whole bill, just 3 sentences in a committee report directing an agency to consider certain factors when writing regulations. Seems minor. Those 3 sentences are worth millions to the client. You know which staffer handles that section of the bill. You worked with her for 2 years on another committee. You text her, you explain what the client needs and why it's reasonable. She adds the language, the committee approves it, the bill passes, the client is thrilled. Your firm bills them $80,000 for 6 weeks of work. You just generated more revenue than you made in an entire year as a legislative director. The economics start making sense. A 1 standard deviation increase in your staff connections predicts an 18% increase in revenue during your first year. Those relationships you built answering phones at midnight, working weekends on bills that went nowhere, trading favors across offices, that's not just professional courtesy anymore, that's inventory. The study is precise about this. When a senator leaves office, lobbyists who worked for them see an immediate 24% drop in revenue. You're not selling expertise, you're selling access. Level 6, the senior associate. Your book of business expands. Corporate clients now, not just associations. A pharmaceutical company needs help navigating FDA regulations. A hospital chain wants to influence Medicare policy. A medical device manufacturer is facing new safety requirements. Each client pays between $15,000 and $30,000 monthly on retainer. You're generating close to $700,000 in annual revenue for the firm. Your cut is $220,000. Finally, real money. You spend half your time on the Hill. Meetings with staffers, testimony before committees, receptions where you stand in crowded rooms making small talk with people who might be useful later. The other half is strategy. Reading bills, tracking amendments, gaming out scenarios. If this provision passes the House, will the Senate accept it? If that senator objects, who can persuade him? If the committee chairman opposes it, is there a workaround? This is where former members have the advantage. John Boehner at Squire Patton Boggs, Roy Blunt at Hoosh Blackwell with his entire former staff. They don't just have relationships, they have history, decades of favours, alliances, shared battles. A former speaker calling a current committee chairman carries weight that no staffer ever will. But you're building toward that. Every successful client engagement, every problem solved, every relationship deepened, you're accumulating capital. Level 7. The partner. 15 years after you started answering phones, you make partner at a top-tier lobbying firm. Your name is on the door, your compensation is tied directly to the revenue you generate. Last year, that was $1.2 million in billings. This year, you're on track for $1.8. The industry is exploding. $5.08 billion spent on federal lobbying in 2025, up 11% from the prior year, the largest increase since quarterly disclosure began. 15,000 organizations reported lobbying activity, up 12%. The money is flowing because the stakes are enormous. Healthcare alone spent $868 million. Finance poured in $711 million. And your clients are terrified of regulatory changes that could cost them billions. They're desperate for provisions that could save them millions. You deliver both. The firm's reputation is built on people like you, former Hill veterans who know how legislation actually moves. You're not just advocating, you're engineering outcomes, finding the precise pressure point in a 1,000-page bill where 2 sentences can shift an entire industry. You mentor junior lobbyists now, teaching them what you learned. Relationships matter more than policy expertise. Members come and go, but staffers build careers. Invest in the legislative assistants and legislative directors. They'll be chiefs of staff eventually. The indirect connections you maintain through staffers are potentially more valuable than direct connections to senators, especially if you have enough of them. Quality and quantity both matter. Some of your former colleagues went even higher. Ballard Partners generated $88.1 million in 2025. They entered the game in 2017 with White House connections and rode those relationships to unprecedented revenue. Their lobbyist now holds senior administration positions, chief of staff, attorney general. That's the ultimate level. When your people are making the decisions, you're not lobbying anymore. You're just coordinating. You're not there yet, but you're closer than that kid answering phones ever imagined possible. The system works exactly as designed. Congress trains you, underpays you, burns you out, then watches you sell everything you learn to the highest bidder. And someone new just submitted an application on the House employment website, dreaming of public service, not realizing they're just the next transaction in the machine. The cycle never stops. Right now, somewhere in a basement office, a 24-year-old is drafting talking points for a member who'll never read them. She's making $35,000, working weekends, telling herself it's temporary, building experience, making connections, learning the system. In 3 years, maybe 4, she'll get the call. A firm downtown needs someone who understands education policy, someone who knows the staffers on the relevant committees, someone who can navigate the process. The salary will be triple what Congress pays. She'll take it. She'll tell herself she's still helping people, just from a different angle. And technically that's true. She's helping someone, just not the public anymore. That's the ladder. That's how it works. You start idealistic, end up practical, and convince yourself the distance between those two things isn't as far as it looks. 30 years from now, she might make partner. Or she might burn out at level 5, wondering what happened to the version of herself that believed government service meant something beyond a resume line. Either way, someone else will take her desk. The machine doesn't need any particular person. It just needs people willing to climb.